This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Fire and ice. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. We'll begin with the ice. Another round of lake effect snow starts tomorrow. No rest for the winter weary. A winter storm watch takes effect Wednesday afternoon and will continue all the way through Friday for Erie, Genesee, Wyoming, Chautauqua, and Cattaraugus counties in New York, as well as Erie County, Pennsylvania. Accumulations of more than a foot are possible.
Erie, PA to Olean, New York. Locally, there could be upwards of 18 inches of snow.
Today's show meteorologist Al Roker. Now to the fire. Mandatory evacuations in effect in Southern California as a ferocious wildfire near Malibu consumes thousands of acres. It's spread to the edges of Pepperdine University. These students could only watch in horror.
We've been watching across the street and it jumped, and I thought it was maybe a car, and it was like a little spot, and in a matter of a few minutes it was the size of a football field.
We're all taking the attitude of prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
We kind of stuck around to wet everything down and do what we could to save our place.
Pepperdine students and staff have been told to shelter in place for their own safety. Strong Santa Ana winds fanning the flames of this dangerous wildfire in Southern California. A 26-year-old Ivy League graduate is in police custody today, accused in the Manhattan sidewalk shooting of a healthcare CEO. His name, Luigi Mangione, captured Monday hundreds of miles from the scene of the crime at a McDonald's restaurant in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Reporter Brian Yennis is there.
Mangione will have a preliminary court hearing on December 23rd here in Pennsylvania, but until then, he will be held in a jail cell.
Retired New York City Police Detective Joe Cardinale says cops want to know the suspect's connection to the victim, 50-year-old Brian Thompson.
They're going to go into his social media. They're going to see what the tie-in is exactly to Mr. Thompson, if there is one, because the question still begs to be asked, why was he there at that particular time at 6:45 and knew exactly where Mr. Thompson would be?
Frank Flicucci is the former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI.
We're seeing what I would call an activist killer. An ideology is driving his violence. There may have been some back surgery. We don't know if that's connected to the beef that he seems to have with the healthcare industry.
The suspected gunman had writings on him at the time of his arrest indicating ill will toward corporate America. Police say Mangione's manifesto included the line, "These parasites had it coming," end quote. He was also carrying, according to police, the ghost gun with a silencer that was used to kill Thompson. Demonstrators took to the streets of New York City last night to protest the jury verdict in the chokehold trial of Daniel Penny.
What's his name?
Penny, a 26-year-old Marine vet, acquitted Monday in the death of Jordan Neely, a man with a history of mental illness. Neely's father, Andre Zachary.
I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts.
Penny restrained Neely in a chokehold last year after the homeless man threatened passengers on a New York City subway. Legal analyst Jonathan Turley.
Most of us are very thankful for this verdict because this is what we teach our children, right? We teach our children not to walk away, but to do something not just for yourself, but for other people. And the concern was that a verdict of guilt in this case would have shattered that.
Despite his acquittal, Penny still's facing a civil lawsuit. In the Middle East, there's uncertainty in Syria. Following the sudden collapse of the Assad regime, reporter Richard Engel says Israel is taking action in the midst of this power vacuum.
Israel is using the stunning and swift collapse of Syria's dictatorship to take over a buffer zone. New footage shows Israeli tanks in the Golan Heights along Israel's northern border with Syria. Arab states have denounced the move as an illegal and provocative land grab. Israel says it's temporary. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it necessary.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is testifying today in court for the first time. The head of state facing bribery and fraud charges in his home country. Prosecutors allege he exchanged favors with media owners for positive news coverage. Netanyahu denies any wrongdoing. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for defense secretary continues to meet with U.S. senators.
I like the fact that we have people that the president is nominating that will take on the establishment. Wokeism is destroying the United States military. I agree with Pete that we don't need to have endless wars.
Congressman Chip Roy thinks Pete Hegseth is a good pick, and Republicans should support him.
We ought to have somebody who's served in battle and understands it, who's at the top of the Pentagon, rather than the brass who often like their ribbons more than actually doing the work that is necessary.
Pete Hegseth can only afford to lose the support of 3 Republican senators if he's going to win confirmation. The Trump administration's mass deportation operation will begin in Chicago. At least that's what the new border czar is saying.
Tom Homan, speaking at a holiday party in Chicago, tells Illinois Republicans that right after President-elect Donald Trump is inaugurated for his new term, the biggest deportation operation the country has ever seen will begin. Homan says the plan includes verifying the status of asylum seekers and arresting people who harbor criminals. He also says if Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson doesn't want to help, he should step aside. Jennifer Kuiper, Chicago.
The U.S. Supreme Court is refusing to hear a case out of Wisconsin that pits parents against transgender-friendly school policy. The justices have left in place a lower court ruling on a school policy in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Some parents complained that policy violated parental rights and undermined religious freedom. Still to come on the Noon Report, a Tuesday edition. Rebate checks for New Yorkers, gambling's big business in Pennsylvania, and leveling the playing field in high school sports.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking more rain coming in tonight into tomorrow. Then colder air flips the rain to snow. And that's lake effect after that. We'll have forecast details coming up. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. In the meantime, let's check the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania. A just released Siena College poll shows the cost of living is the number one concern of New York voters. That same survey gives Governor Hochul a 46% job approval rating. Only a third of New York residents say they'd vote to re-elect Hochul in 2026. 57% say they want somebody else. Governor Hochul's proposing inflation rebate checks to help residents afford living in the Empire State.
This is a one-time $3 billion surplus that I believe should be returned to 8.6 million households across New York later this year.
Individuals who make less than $150,000 a year would get a $300 check. Families whose income does not exceed $300,000 a year would get $500 from the state of New York.
I know the stress parents feel intuitively. In my bones, I feel it. And that's why I am so committed to helping New York families in any way possible. Make your lives better in real, tangible ways.
Critics contend instead of offering rebates, the state should cut taxes so families can better afford life in the Empire State. Pennsylvania ranks first in the nation when it comes to the amount of tax dollars collected through gambling. Josh Ercole with the Council on Compulsive Gambling.
It's kind of representing that dangling carrot that I'm just one click or one decision or one guess away from that big win. And unfortunately, for a lot of folks, that big win never happens.
He says online sports wagering's a big reason why Pennsylvania is hooked on gambling. Vegas bookie Rafael Esposara has some advice for those caught up in sports betting.
Just because there's a Monday Night Football game on TV does not mean you need to bet it.
Last year, Pennsylvania took in nearly $2.5 billion in taxes from gambling. New York was second with just over $2 billion. Nevada came in third. 3rd. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says Micron and the federal government are close to a deal on a new plant outside Syracuse. This will lock in funding for that massive computer chip manufacturing facility that Micron is building in the town of Clay. Onondaga County Executive Ryan McMahon says construction on the site won't get underway, though, until late next year. Crews are having to work around an endangered bat species that's living in that area. Pennsylvania Congressman Glenn Thompson says President-elect Trump is right to want to stay out of Syria after the ouster over the weekend of longtime dictator Bashar al-Assad.
We need to be very careful about overextending the United States, and interventions in the Middle East has cost us a tremendous amount in the past.
Yeah.
So let's see what the people of Syria can do here.
Thompson tells Family Life News that developments in Syria have weakened the Putin regime in Russia and may persuade Vladimir Putin to seek peace with Ukraine. Syria's dictator is in exile right now in Russia. New York's largest teachers union is calling for a statewide ban on cell phones at school.
Phone-free schools are markedly louder because students are having face-to-face conversations with their peers again.
NYSUT President Melinda Person says New York should follow the guidance of the federal Department of Education and impose restrictions on phones in the classroom.
They specifically called for clear and consistent policies, which is the thing that we are lacking here in New York State.
70% of New York school districts already have a phone policy, though many do not include an outright ban. Governor Hochul could announce during her State of the State speech next month a bell-to-bell cell phone ban during the school day. New York Assemblyman Matt Slater's proposing a bill that would force public and private high schools into separate playoffs. Slater says that change would level the playing field in high school sports. Currently, private schools are able to compete with athletes from several districts, whereas public schools must play with the athletes in just their district. A similar legislative effort is underway in Pennsylvania. A Buffalo Bills stars teamed up with the top Democrat in Congress to push for AEDs in public schools.
Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin is hoping that every school in America has the tools to save someone in cardiac arrest. Hamlin and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer are working to pass a law that would require schools across the country to have automated external defibrillators, or AEDs. The HEARTS Act stands for Cardiomyopathy Health Education, Awareness, Research, and Training in Schools. If passed, it would put more AEDs in schools and make CPR training more accessible across the nation. Hamlin went into cardiac arrest during a football game in January of 2023, and thankfully, he survived. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Sprinkler systems are commonplace in commercial buildings, not so much in private homes. But that could soon be changing. The state of New York may mandate new homes come with sprinklers. Fire expert Bill Stryker says it could save lives.
The odds of fire fatality in a residential home with working sprinklers and working smoke alarms, fire alarms, reduces fatality rate by 90%.
Home builders, however, point out the cost of constructing a sprinkler system is not cheap.
Averages that I've heard are putting it roughly between $30,000 and $40,000 added to the cost of a home.
In many cases, you're going to be between $25,000 and $35,000 per sprinkler system.
The State Firefighters Association has come out against the proposed sprinkler system mandate. The freeze-thaw weather cycle of late causing strain on homes, especially those in the lake belts. Experts say snow and ice buildup is taxing downspouts and gutters. Erie, Pennsylvania contractor Matt Bauer.
People are calling in with down gutters that are coming down, and they want us to come take them down before they cause a problem, like hit your electric wire.
Feet of lake-effect snowflakes caused dozens of roof collapses as well. Experts say you should invest in a snow rake and clear your roof as much as possible to prevent structural damage, because we've got more lake-effect snow on the way. Food pantries at SUNY schools schools help provide students a steady source of nutrition at no cost. Debbie Waller-Frederick is director of the Food Pantry program at SUNY Sullivan in downstate New York.
We had 444 individual visits our first year. This last year, we had 1,401 visits. So the need is there. The need is there every day, every week.
She says with grocery prices as high as they are, demand for food pantries is only getting more pronounced on college campuses. Many of these students who rely on the food pantries have spouses and children of their own. Well, several towns in Pennsylvania are being singled out as great winter getaway destinations. We get that story new at noon from Family Life's Brian Query.
Indiana, Pennsylvania is called the Christmas tree capital of the world and is the hometown of Jimmy Stewart, whose role in It's a Wonderful Life is so recognizable this season. The town gets high praise and a high ranking from visitpa.com, as PA tourism officials have ranked places in the Commonwealth that either could look good in a holiday movie or perhaps has looked good in such a movie. The top-ranked attraction on the list is Ligonier in Westmoreland County, which state tourist officials say is often compared to Stars Hollow, the fictional town where the Gilmore Girls TV show was set. Canonsburg, Washington County ranks second, followed by Jim Thorpe, New Hope, Bethlehem, Gettysburg, and Indiana. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was quite the night for Jamar Chase. He had 14 receptions for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns to help the Bengals beat the Cowboys on their home turf. 27-20 the final. Joe Burrow completed 33 of 44 passes for 369 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also threw 1 pick. On the ice in Buffalo, the Sabres could not hold on to a 2-goal third-period lead. They fell in a shootout to Detroit 6-5. That ends the Red Wings' 5-game losing streak and extends Buffalo's winless streak to 7 games. Jason Zucker had a pair of goals and an assist for the Sabres. At Madison Square Garden, Arvid Soderblom stopped 29 of the 30 shots he faced, and the Blackhawks edged the Rangers 2-1. Chicago snapped a 5-game skid, and the New Yorkers have now dropped back-to-back games. Will Cooley scored the lone goal for the Blue Shirts. One other game in the NHL saw the Canadiens come out on top of a shootout 3-2 over the Ducks. Just one game in the NBA last night, and the Knicks took the spotlight well with a 113-108 victory in Toronto over the Raptors. Karl Anthony Towns led the way with a double-double, scoring 24 points and grabbing 15 boards. Jalen Brunson got in on the double-double act as well. He scored 20 points and dished out 11 assists. Mikal Bridges, well, he didn't have the 2 doubles, but he did score 23 points as the Knicks had a well-balanced attack. New York now 15-9 on the season. Former Knick R.J. Barrett led all scorers in the contest. He had 30 points. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, man, thank you very much. Still to come, who is Luigi Mangione? What next for war-torn Syria? And how much should I tip anyway?
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stone Street. Well, if the Christian civic duty is only to vote, it's now safe to return to life as normal, at least until the next election cycle starts in a few months. However, much more is involved in the fight for the soul of any nation, including this one. Our civic duty extends far beyond just the ballot box. The historic shifts that we saw this past election in the platforms of both political parties are not just because of changes in popular opinion. Instead, they point to something deeper, to how dramatically our collective cultural imagination has indeed shifted, a shift that is reflective in our institutions. Simply put, civic duty and political change cannot be reduced to just how one votes. It's how we live, especially how we live with those to whom we are or should be the closest. That matters far more. For example, studies have long shown that regular family dinners bring enormous benefit, especially to children. According to the director of the Family Dinner Project, Dr. Ann Fischel, regularly gathering around the dinner table results in better nutrition, less obesity, and better mental health. Quote, regular family dinners are associated with lower rates of depression and anxiety and substance abuse and eating disorders and tobacco use and early teenage pregnancy and higher rates of resilience and higher self-esteem, end quote. For school-age kids, frequent family mealtime is, and I quote, an even more powerful predictor of high achievement scores than time spent in school doing homework, playing sports, or doing art, end quote. One way that Christians can make a lasting, significant difference in politics is by protecting and cultivating the dinner table. The future of our nation, in fact, may indeed depend on whether Christians make family mealtimes a sacred space. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. I want to say thanks today to Carl from Sewanee, Georgia. Thanks for being a monthly supporter of the Colson Center. You helped to make this episode of Breakpoint a reality. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Jared Hayden, and for more resources like this one, visit us at breakpoint.org.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. Cloudy and mild with a passing shower, some areas of fog and drizzle. High temps not far from 50. Rain redevelops tonight, low temps 40s. Rain tomorrow flips to snow late. Temperatures tomorrow may start in the 40s or 50s, depending upon your location in the region, then tumble through the 30s in the afternoon. Some slushy accumulations will be possible later in the day and at night. Then windy and much colder tomorrow night and Thursday, with flurries for all, lake effect snows for some. High temperatures on Thursday only in the 20s.
All right, well, so much for our spring fling. Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Lots going on Tuesday, the 10th of December. A wildfire is burning precariously close to the campus of Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. Students and staff there told to shelter in place. That fire, fueled by strong Santa Ana winds, grew in size to about 2,000 acres today. A mandatory evacuation order is in effect for Malibu. The 26-year-old accused of shooting to death a healthcare CEO on a sidewalk in New York City last week is now being held without bail. Luigi Mangione captured Monday at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
In America, we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a viewpoint. I have no tolerance for one man using an illegal ghost gun to murder someone because he thinks his opinion matters most.
Mangione was valedictorian of his private high school in Maryland. He graduated from UPenn in 2020. 26-year-old Marine vet Daniel Penny found not guilty yesterday in a landmark racially motivated case that sparked national attention. Penny acquitted in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely, a man with a history of mental illness. The Marine vet subdued Neely after he began threatening passengers last year on a New York City subway. President-elect Trump is fighting to get his cabinet stocked, but it's an uphill battle for several nominees. Reporter Garrett Hake says it's crunch time in the Capitol Hill confirmation process.
Yeah, this is shaping up to be a big week in Washington for some of Donald Trump's most controversial cabinet selections. These are folks who are unlikely to get any Democratic support, which means they could only afford to lose 3 Republican votes. And it's with those narrow margins in mind that they're working on Capitol Hill to lock down GOP support.
The most controversial of the president's picks is Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth. He is among those making the rounds today on Capitol Hill. Overseas, there's a power vacuum in war-torn Syria after the weekend ouster of the Assad regime. Reporter Elizabeth Palmer has the latest from Damascus.
Crowds came to sightsee around one of the former dictator's houses and to get to know the Islamist fighters who swept into their city on Sunday. They were on best behavior, even lending their weapons for photo ops.
Syria's long-term dictator and his family are in exile in Moscow after being granted asylum by President Vladimir Putin. New York Governor Kathy Hochul's proposing inflation rebate checks for more than 8.5 million New Yorkers.
I think a lot about working moms and dads in the state. I think about our healthcare workers, our bus drivers, the laborers, the restaurant, hotel hotel workers, the first responders, the teachers. We all depend on them. And I want them to be able to stay here. I don't want people to leave because they can't afford to live in this great state where they started.
Those one-time checks would range from $300 to $500 depending on your income or marital status. Now, if approved by the state legislature, the checks could arrive in the mail later next year. You're listening to the Noon Report for Tuesday on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Hometown Heroes on Family Life. I'm Mark Webster, and this week's guest is Dan Miller, a Southern Tier pastor who, along with his wife Elaine, has been volunteering for many years with Wreaths Across America, a program that honors America's war dead by placing wreaths on the graves of service personnel in national cemeteries, including those in Bath and Elmira, New York. He spoke with our Greg Gillespie.
It is a national program and has been a national program since about 2007. Had been on a smaller scale before that, but in 2007 they went national because it had become such a popular program across the country. Their mission is to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach our children the value of freedom. And the theme this year is Live with a Purpose.
And the project here has literally wreaths spread across large sections of national cemeteries. How big of a project is that here in Bath, New York?
Well, Greg, in 2022, 3,700 wreaths were laid at the Bath National Cemetery, and the goal for this year is 6,000 wreaths at the Bath Cemetery. They also do this at the Woodlawn Cemetery in Elmira, and I'm not sure what their numbers are there.
And so these wreaths, where do they come from, and who are the people who place them?
Well, originally, this originated in the state of Maine, in a small community there. I'm not exactly sure where all the wreaths come from at this time, but they may. The vast majority of them, I think, still come out of that location. The wreaths are placed totally by volunteers who are aware of this and come up on a particular day and are involved in the placing of the wreaths at the various cemeteries.
What significance does that have for you, to be someone who has been involved in that over the past several years? Tell us about your personal motivation and how meaningful this is for you.
Well, my father was in the Navy in World War II. I was in the Navy during Vietnam War. My son is in the Air Force. I've had a grandson in the Marines and another grandson in the Army, so we have a very active family background with the services. So that's a lot of my motivation is for that, but just the whole idea of keeping the service of veterans before the people, whether it's at Wreaths Across America or on Memorial Day or Veterans Day, is something that's very important to me personally.
Are they still looking for volunteers to be there and take part in this Saturday?
Sure, that will be this Saturday, and it begins at noon with a short ceremony at the base of the cemetery, and then they disperse across the grounds of the cemetery to lay wreaths one at a time at the various graves. And yes, volunteers do not need to sign up; they just need to show up at 12 on Saturday morning. And there's parking. You can't drive up into the cemetery itself because it would be too congested, but there's parking below there, and shuttle buses are available to take people to the cemetery.
Do you know of other, you mentioned the two, Woodlawn and Bath, are there others in our region, Pennsylvania, New York, who are also involved with this now?
I imagine that most national cemeteries are involved in this, and I think there may be a cemetery in Canandaigua that may also be doing this. Elaine and I have been doing this for at least 6 or 8 years now, and we've done it with our small group from church before. We've done it with our children and grandchildren, and we look at it as an opportunity to really, as the mission says, to educate our children about the value of freedom. And we've always enjoyed doing it. I would just say one thing: if you do go, check the weather forecast and make sure you dress for the weather, because if there's snow on the ground, of course you deal with all the things of winter. So I've gone a couple of times and wishing I had dressed a little warmer for the conditions. If I can just say one more thing, if people are interested in more specific information, the website is Wreaths Across America. That's pretty simple to remember. And there is information on there more about the organization and an opportunity for people to sponsor a wreath. I think it's $17 to sponsor a wreath. And it may or may not be too late to do that for this year, but just in case somebody wants to go and check that out.
Wreaths Across America is the website.
Wreaths Across America, yes.
Dan Miller, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure thing.
That's Dan Miller, a Southern Tier pastor who, along with his wife Elaine, has been volunteering for many years with Wreaths Across America, honoring America's fallen heroes every Christmas season by placing wreaths on the graves of service personnel in national cemeteries, including Bath National Cemetery and Woodlawn National Cemetery in Elmira, New York. He spoke with our Greg Gillespie. Please join us again next time as we search for your home, your town, your hero. It's Hometown Heroes on Family Life.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Greg, for doing that interview. Hometown Heroes comes your way every Tuesday during the Noon Report or online anytime. FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Today we're between systems. Yesterday's rainmaker has departed, but the next one is approaching. It will bring rain tonight into tomorrow and a shot of cold air in its wake that'll flip the rain to snow and then turn back on the lake effect snow machine. Here are the forecast details for this afternoon. Cloudy and mild with a passing shower, some areas of fog and drizzle. High temps not far from 50. Rain redevelops tonight, low temps 40s. Rain tomorrow flips to snow late. Temperatures tomorrow may start in the 40s or 50s, depending upon your location in the region, then tumble through the 30s in the afternoon. Some slushy accumulations will be possible later in the day and at night. Then windy and much colder tomorrow night and Thursday, with flurries for all, lake effect snows for some. High temperatures on Thursday only in the 20s.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Finally, noon. How much do I tip anyway? Well, Bankrate.com's Ted Rossman says that depends on the type of service you receive.
The low end is mail carriers and trash and recycling collectors. The median there is $20. For teachers, it's $25. Landscapers, gardeners, snow removers are $30. And then housekeepers and childcare providers are $50.
I just tipped my hairdresser $5. I hope that was good enough. Rossman says a good rule of thumb around the holidays especially is whatever you usually tip for a service rendered, just double it around the holidays. There you go. Some tipping tips for a Tuesday. And that's our world. The world we live in, Tuesday, December the 10th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.